So, so it's not ideal to have two guys.
Yeah, it is not ideal to have two players suspended.
Draft picks are like watermelons. Like you can see, like, does this one have the webbing? Does this one have how does it sound? And as someone who loves watermelon, I've tried to I've tried to master everything you're supposed to look for. And there's time and time again where I'm like, this is it. And I open it up and it's mealy.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus Podcast here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel, presented by Connors and Ferris. She's Jenna Cottrell. I'm Dan Fates. Mike Catalana, the legend, the Hall of Famer, getting some time away. He's on vacation right now, still texting us Bills news as it goes along. But
like a day late.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an overdue podcast. Before we get into it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Over 37,000 of you beautiful subscribers. So we really appreciate it. Okay, I was saying how this is kind of an overdue podcast because Thursday, Jenna was off. I went up to Buffalo for the Joey Bosa press conference, Damar Hamlin press conference, as well as Derek Forrest. And then Friday, Beane spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And for lack of a better word, the hit the fan. And then I was on vacation, or I was off. So we wanted to get this video out for you on Monday morning and kind of get our thoughts on everything that's happened, as well as the Bills re-signing Dane Jackson, Damar Hamlin, as well speaking, because I thought he had some interesting points. Bosa's, I thought, points, or what he said at his press conference were really interesting to me, as well as Terrell Bernard changing his number. So we'll get into all of that and the implications of Brandon Beane, because I think some people are pretty upset, and I think they have a fair point to be. But Jenna, I just want to get your first reaction to hearing of these suspensions of Michael Hoecht and Larry Ogunjobi when you first heard it.
Yeah, so I got the push notification from ESPN. Elena Getzenberg did an article. And so I read the push alert, and it said, both Bills defensive line players suspended for PEDs. And I was like, that can't be right. Like, I was like, what? And I clicked on it and I was like, wow. I mean, 6 games, the first 6 games of the season for both Hoecht as well as Ogunjobi. It was a surprise to me because these are guys that you brought in. Now, Beane said in his press conference he did know about Hoecht, but the fact that there's now 2 players that will not be able to participate in the first 6 weeks of the season, I mean, that to me, that is a lot. Like, you brought in these guys, you knew what you needed to do in terms of the defensive line, and for them to be out now for, a decent amount of the season, the regular season, I thought it was surprising first and foremost, but then also could be a huge detriment to this team and what they're trying to do. And I know you might be saying, oh, well, it's the first 6 games of the season, this team will continue on. I get it. It is a long season, but at the same point, you knew you needed a pass rush. You knew you needed impactful players. And now 2 guys that you brought in will not be on the field. And that's not nothing, Dan.
Yeah. Here's what Brandon Beane had to say, because it was bizarre, strange. I mean, this is a layup of a press conference that Brandon Beane gets to do every year, talking about the players he signed, how much he loves them, how much they're going to impact this team. I always think Jeremy White of WGR does a great job of the flow chart of a player signs with your team. Awesome. It's a steal. Player doesn't sign with your team. It's too much money that team got fleeced. But Beane's explaining the signings of Hoecht and Ogunjobi, and then he has to say this.
And while I'm on those guys, there's a couple things. Part of the delay, I'll start with Larry. Part of the delay with Larry was he received, around this time after we agreed, he got a notice that a PED pending suspension. So he came into my office yesterday. We did not know it when we agreed the other night. So had a conversation, and I give him credit because it's early in the process. The league doesn't even know about it the way that it's done by an independent group. But he was very forthright. Larry's a he was Pittsburgh's man of the year. Like, he's a good man. He's played 8 years in the league and never had a blip. And so, that's obviously frustrating for him and a little bit of a setback for us. And so, but we've talked it through. We're in a good spot, but that's part of the delay. We did get him here yesterday, and there's some contractual things that we've had to work through. And so he hasn't officially signed yet, but he should be signing shortly. But again, so he will be out the first 6 games. And the second curveball here is Hoecht we knew about. So we were aware of his, and I would not have done 2 guys, but we did a 3-year deal with Hoecht knowing his situation. Same thing, he's been in the league 5 years. I think his was earlier. We were made aware of it. There's a thing we can get with the league that we can find out his status we knew, and we talked it through with his agents. So, so it's not ideal to have 2 guys with that. But both guys have never had any issues off the field. And, it's a tough lesson of where do you get your supplements or whatever happened. And I think Larry you guys can ask him, I think he's planning to talk to the media. Mike will be up next because he has signed. My understanding from Mike thinks, he knows what happened, but and then Larry does not know, still looking into it, but wanted to just expedite it and be done. He could have drug it out. So we're going to have to, and we've talked about this since we got that news yesterday, we're going to have to kind of treat this as if we know now that a couple of guys are, injured in camp, and you're going to, you put them on IR to start. So the way that would work, those guys will be out the 6 games. They can be out they have to be out of the building 4, and then they can come back for 2 and begin play week 7. So they'll be with us in the offseason program, the training camp, and then when you make the 53 cut. So again, we'll be okay. It's just kind of planned for one. The other one, he literally got the letter, Larry did this week. Honestly, did not have to tell us because the league, when I called them, they were unaware of it, and it all added up to when they get these tests, there's more than one sample. There's one sample, and then like 3 weeks later is the next sample. Until both have been tested, the league is not made aware of it. And so, but again, we'll embrace those guys. And if they were guys that this had happened before, we probably would have avoided them. But again, Larry's been in the league, man of the year, 8 years, and sometimes, whatever. And again, he doesn't. You can ask him, but my understanding is he is not knowing, what exactly occurred, and so we'll see. You guys know how this works. You guys have seen this before, where you get frustrated, like somebody agrees, and then 2 days pass, and then they change their mind or whatever. Well, guess what? Everyone else has already agreed and signed, so the pool has been thinned out. And so by the time we learn this, and what are your options? You either stay with the player, or a lot of other players have agreed to terms. Maybe we would have, we definitely wouldn't have gone into this with 2 guys facing this. But at this point, choosing Larry's position, since we agree with him, there's a lot of other D tackles off the market. And so that's why we, and again, he was straight up with as soon as he walked in my office yesterday just to talk, and I respect that about him.
Yeah, so a couple of things stood out to me. One, I love the fact that Beane has to go, yeah, it's not ideal, like as he's explaining this, which I thought was just what any of us would do in this situation. And I know people are very upset and frustrated, and comment in below your thoughts, maybe after hearing the full explanation. And there's more to it. There's salary cap implications. There's the way that, pretty much they go on IR for the first 6 games. They're not allowed to be in the building now for the first 4 weeks. Then they can rejoin the team. Similar to Von's suspension, the NFLPA has kind of changed that. So when a player is suspended, it's not exactly like they're banished from the team. They will be able to participate in all of the offseason stuff. Then when training camp ends, they'll hit IR. So all of that kind of plays into it. The Hoecht signing, obviously Beane saying we knew about him, but we're signing him to 3 years. So if you're looking at it and saying you're going to take your medicine, we still like the player, we still like the future that we can have with him, I understand. And I'm not trying to side with Beane here, but he does kind of give the explanation too of like, well, then why did you sign Ogunjobi? And it's like, well, I wouldn't have signed him if we would have known. Pretty much the NFL, when Beane talked on Friday, the NFL wasn't even aware of the suspension. The B sample hasn't even been tested. Like, this is all very last minute. And you always talk about agreeing to terms, and there are players that agree to terms, and then when the day comes actually signed and free agency actually opens, some players go back on their word and agree to another team. But at that point, I kind of understand Beane being you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because you wanted him to be on your D-line. You target him. You agree to terms. 48 hours goes by. We know how fast NFL free agency works. And then all of a sudden, this happens. You're going to lose the guy for the 1-year deal that you signed him, a third of the season, because of a PED. And now to look around and then say, well, who else is out there? Well, is Ogunjobi for 12 games plus playoffs still better than somebody you would have for 18 games plus playoffs? I don't know. That is where Beane has to make that decision. But you're kind of screwed if you do, Jenna. You're kind of screwed if you don't, because at that point, decisions are already being made. And Beane's kind of caught with his pants down of like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, at this point, you're kind of backed into a corner, because it feels like a bit like musical chairs for some of these guys, because it's like there's only a limited number of supply and people are getting picked up left and right. And it's like, all right, the music stopped. And at this point, there's really not the chair you want out there. So this is something the Bills will have to take on the chin and then move forward. Like, that's some of these things. It's like, is this what Beane wanted? Obviously not. But this is the situation that they're in, and this is the situation that's going to play out. So how can you best adapt in the ways that you need to not let this completely derail the start of your season?
I do feel bad for the coaching staff as well, because training camp, you're trying to find continuity. You're trying to find your systems, your schemes, and all of that fit. And you're going to try and integrate them and get them up to speed in your system, while also knowing it's not just one game. It's 6 that you're then not going to have.
And it's new guys.
Yeah.
Like, it's new play, the familiarity piece, like all that continuity that you do build, then will have to be segmented because, oh wait, they can't be out there. Yeah. And like the Hoecht stuff for him, a 3-year contract. I understand that, where you're like, obviously not ideal, but we're going to have him for a significant amount of time in the building. We really like the upside. But for Ogunjobi, a 1-year contract, and then, like you said, the first 6 games he's not out there. I understand why Bills fans are really upset. I also think sometimes it's a little buyer beware, that can happen too. And that's, unfortunately, the Bills are now dealing with this twofold as opposed to what they originally thought.
And in my opinion, Jenna, I don't know what you think. I'm more upset at Beane and kind of more annoyed at the move of Hoecht than Ogunjobi. Like, you knew Hoecht. So you were fully aware when you were agreeing to terms, because Hoecht said he got his letter 3 weeks into the offseason.
Yeah.
He also spoke on Friday. I mean, so did Ogunjobi. They both took full responsibility. I'm not trying to pat them. I'm not going to try and give them credit. Like, they said the right things. Hoecht said that he had been working with a trainer for years, had trusted the trainer too much, wasn't checking the supplements, wasn't being vigilant. He has nobody to blame but himself. Called it the lowest point of his life when he got the letter, because it's not just a knock on your play as a player of like, hey, those numbers you put up, hey, it's, he says, the knock on his character. Again, that sucks. But the Ogunjobi is like totally out of left field. Like, if Ogunjobi still technically didn't have any responsibility to tell the Bills now at the time of this recording on Sunday afternoon, but you knew about Hoecht. And that's
Yeah.
where I give Beane a little bit of, it sucks this way it happened, because he goes, it's not ideal with two guys. You're sitting there. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like you're sitting there, but the fact that it was the second one that blindsided you, I don't put as much blame on Beane, because you got blindsided. Like that just sucks. So it's like the Hoecht one is the one I'm a little bit frustrated as, is like, okay, I understand it's a 3-year deal. I understand you like the guy and all these things. And none of these guys have had any issues off the field. Ogunjobi was the Pittsburgh Steelers Man of the Year, Walter Payton nominee. Like, these aren't bad guys. This isn't a Von Miller domestic dispute, allegations about anything like that facing a suspension. This isn't a DUI. This isn't any of these things. So it to me though, if people want to be upset in Beane, I'd be more upset about the 3-year Hoecht investment than I am about the Ogunjobi, because that one, Beane didn't know. Ogunjobi didn't know when he was agreeing to terms, and it just comes out of left field.
Question for you then, though. If Ogunjobi didn't have the suspension, would it still be as big of a deal for you with the Hoecht stuff when Beane signed him? So it's because of... So then I don't know if that's really fair.
The Ogunjobi makes the Hoecht thing worse, but you knew about Hoecht. It's like it's Jenna. Here we go. The dating comparison. They signed a guy that was open about cheating. Okay, like he cheated on his previous relationship. It was a fluke, but now with Ogunjobi, you just found out about this. So I give a little bit of a pass there. It's the fact that the Ogunjobi one makes the Hoecht one twice as bad, in my opinion. And that is obviously hindsight being 2020.
I was gonna say, I hear you. I guess my thing was, you should probably have known with Ogunjobi. Like if you knew with
I got it. Ready?
Ogunjobi.
Yes. Ogunjobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out Joe B. Shout out Joe B. It's easy. Ogunjobi.
Oh, that's like, okay.
Yeah.
But maybe you should have known more details before signing him. Like if you knew about Hoecht.
They could have backed out.
Yeah. I'm just saying, why did you know about one guy and why did you not about the other? That's a question I don't know the answer to.
Well, Hoecht said he knew going into the agreements of the term. Ogunjobi found out after they had agreed. So he found out in like the 48 hours on, whenever free agency opened to signing.
Okay.
So that's why Beane was saying, like, I could have not done the deal, but then what do I have? Like, they could have gotten out of the Ogunjobi deal.
The musical chairs of now there's no chairs. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great analogy. Phenomenal analogy of musical chairs.
Yeah.
Other just little ones. The Bills re-signing Dane Jackson on Friday to a 1-year deal. Jenna, I like this signing. We're sitting there on Thursday, Matt Beauvais and I, and we're sitting there and we're going, they're going to sign Dane Jackson, aren't they? And Beauvais's like, what are the odds? And he's like, minus 250. And I was like, at least minus 125. And then literally 24 hours later, they signed Dane Jackson. Jenna, your thoughts? Because I think this is a fine signing.
I agree. I know some people online were pretty upset about it. Like, what Dane Jackson is. Now, some people on this podcast might have referred to Dane Jackson as the ugly penny.
Nope, that was Levi Wallace.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
No,
well, either way.
Dane Jackson he took over the penny after Levi left.
Okay,
He was another one of those guys that they constantly never wanted to have start, but he constantly just kept earning starts.
Yeah, I think to me, this makes sense. We're still up in the air in terms of what they're going to do with Rasul Douglas. Are they going to bring him back? Are they not? Like, what will that look like? What will that piece of the defense be? You bring back Dane Jackson, a guy who has a ton of familiarity with the system. He knows what it's like to play in Buffalo, what it's like to be on this team. So yeah, I think this is a low risk move that makes sense because he can be your stopgap or whatever you need him to be if that is necessary. But also he is a great depth piece that knows what he's doing in terms of what this team wants. So I think to me, it's like, yeah, okay, cool. They re-signed Dane Jackson. I'm not expecting him to have 82 interceptions this season. Like, I think it's okay to sign guys like this. I don't think not every signing you're going to be like smash it out of the park. Sometimes you got to bunt. Sometimes you
Got to
just
move a guy over. Got to get
you
him in a
gotta-
scoring
yeah,
position.
Sometimes it's about the small ball.
Yeah.
That's what the Bills are doing with this.
Yeah. My thoughts on Dane Jackson are very similar to Damar Hamlin. The outrage, as I went on my soapbox last podcast, is like, I don't know what you're mad about, especially with Damar getting a $1 million or a $2 million deal for 1 year. Like, that is not breaking the bank. It's not inhibiting you from signing a player, drafting a player, anything like that. If Damar Hamlin starts, like I said, that is more of a knock on Cole Bishop than a indictment on the coaching staff of starting Damar Hamlin. And Dane Jackson's the same way. They are not signing Dane Jackson to a 1 year deal being like, cornerback 2, locked up, guys. We're all set. We got Dane back. Now, Dane, again, 7th round pick, played 4 years in Buffalo and was fine. Like, he started like 26 games, things like that, like had pinch starts and things like that. They obviously wanted to upgrade the position, and they did when they brought in Rasul Douglas and kind of made some of those moves. So it made sense to move on from Dane, which I felt was the right decision. Like, you know what Dane Jackson's ceiling is. You also know what his floor is.
Mhm.
But depth signings also have to happen. And Jenna, to your point, like, depth signings aren't sexy. But if you have Dane Jackson as your 3rd or 4th corner, fine. Let him compete with Jamarcus Ingram for the 3rd corner spot.
Yeah.
And then you either are going to bring back Rasul, or hopefully you're drafting a corner that's going to start. Like, they need to fill out this cornerback room. They still
remember
need
too, Kaiir is gone.
Kaiir
Like,
is gone.
That spot is now available. I would
Right.
take Dane Jackson over Kaiir.
100%. I don't think there's anybody that could possibly argue that.
Yeah.
So
You're right, though. I think it is important sometimes. Like, free agency is all about the sexiness, the lipstick of like who's this big name,
Whoa.
all this stuff. Yeah, you can tell I'm like, no. Humble and hungry sometimes works. No,
Yeah.
but like, seriously, in all seriousness, not every signing you're going to be like, this is amazing, but this is how you round out a roster.
Yep.
And you're going to need depth guys. And so it's not going to have the splash and the sizzle that you want, but there is stake there, and that's what's important.
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about too in the media room, like, if you signing a guy like Damar Hamlin, bringing him back, and signing Dane Jackson, if you don't sign them, who are guys you are familiar with, comfortable with, knowing the system, you're going to sign another guy that is just like Dane Jackson and just like Damar Hamlin. Like, you're not sitting there going to be like, this guy we're signing, he's a stud. I can't believe this other team let him go. And now you're bringing him to be your 3rd or 4th corner. Like, your 3rd or 4th corner is going to be a guy that is 3rd or 4th corner talent. And that's Dane Jackson. Like, he's a spot starter and he can play. So, and I think that's a good segue too, Jenna, to get into Kaiir, because he was traded on Thursday after we recorded that last podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
Beane talked about it. They get a 5th or 6th or 7th. It's not really, it's more draft capital, and things like that. Beane talked about it, saying he was going to get emotional talking about Kaiir, saying it just didn't work out, that it wasn't Kair's fault in the sense of lack of effort or trying. Kaiir needs a new start. The Bills needed to get him off the roster.
Yeah.
I credit Beane for the sense of not keeping him around just for the sake of keeping him around. The Bills needed to move on. Kaiir needed a fresh start. Best of luck to him. But Beane did say, like, it's on him. Like, that is Beane's biggest draft bust. No question. Boogie Basham's a close second, but nobody has Beane hasn't swung and missed more on a fastball than Kaiir Elam.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm glad that he took the ego hit and was able to do that and cut his losses, because I think it is not for a lack of trying. I mean, I think of how many times we would go into the Bills field house for, interviews, and Kaiir would be out there with Christian Benford, and the two of them would be working, after practice ended, like working on fundamentals, him on the jugs machine, like all of those things that you want to see from a guy, especially a 1st round pick. But it just never came together in the way that the Bills thought it would. And sometimes it's not okay to miss that hard, but also sometimes it is okay to say, this is just not working, and we need to figure out what we can do. The fact that the Bills got something back, like when people were talking earlier on in the offseason, were like, Kair's going to get traded. I was like, what is the market for him?
Yeah.
Like realistically, you know what I mean? I think it just the noise around Western New York was that the guy was a bust, all this stuff. So the fact that the Bills were able to get and recoup a little something back, but that does not change the fact that you hit the nail on the head. That was a bad draft pick.
Bad.
By Brandon Beane.
Capital
You
B.
traded up to get him. He did not pan out in the way, never
Yeah.
was a bona fide starter for this team, was dicey when he was on the field for Buffalo. So now you cut your losses, you reset, and hopefully, I mean, Kaiir's a great guy. I hope that and wish him success in Dallas, but I'm glad that they cut the cord and decided it's time to move on for both sides.
And they tried, like, they hired a different cornerback position. They fired coaches. Like, they did everything they could to invest in Kaiir, and it just didn't work out. And that is life in the NFL and all of those things. It's funny thinking about Beane making these signings, guys getting suspended, moving on from Kaiir. We've said it before, like the heat has been, it used to be on this channel and everything we would hear is it was 100% McDermott's fault on everything. Every draft pick, we've constantly banged the drum here on Buffalo Plus. Like, comment, subscribe, appreciate it. The fact of it's somewhere in the middle. Like you have to also, if you're going to knock Beane for Kaiir, you also have to credit him for Taron because he did that. But then do you credit McDermott for coaching up Taron? Like it's all of those things. It is cohesiveness. Okay. It's the draft pick. It's the coaching. It all has to blend together.
Mm-hmm.
Beane obviously has the blue chip and the trump card for always having drafted Josh Allen, all of those things. You can credit Dable, you can credit Josh, you can credit all of those things that go around it. But I feel like the pendulum's starting to swing a little bit of people realizing the heat's getting ramped up on Beane. And when I say that, let me just preface this by saying there is no world that Sean McDermott or Brandon Beane are on the hot seat or getting fired anytime soon. And I can promise you that because look at Terry Pagula's other team that he owns, and they're really, really bad. And Terry Pagula is not good at hiring coaches or GMs in other sports. He got it right with Beane and McDermott. That being said, Jenna, I do find it funny. We always go into it. It was actually Russillo was on Part of My Take recently, and he was talking about how he's been alive for the most important presidential elections, every single one. And I'm sitting here going into this one going, it's a pretty important draft for Brandon Beane. It may be his most important draft for Brandon Beane. It's like, yeah, it's his most important draft since the last one. And the one before that, that was his most important draft and things like that. Because this is, again, he's hit it out of the park with, we talked about that class of Cook, Bernard, Shakir, and those guys. But we're still waiting to see what happens with Cook. There still has to be a Benford deal. I'm expecting that to happen at some point this offseason. But I'm looking at it going, Beane has got a ton of picks. Yeah. And I think he's got 10 right now. I'm in the less need camp of them picks. But yeah. But just like looking at this and I'm going, look, there aren't 10 rookies that are going to make this roster. For as much as I think this roster needs to be improved, there's just no world that happens. Mm-hmm. So trying to balance like Beane having to make up for the Kaiir thing. Like he has to make up for a little bit of that. He has to make up for, in a sense, Daquan Jones signing. Like he's got to fill some of these things where he hasn't had massive success on the D line. And we keep saying he's got to figure it out now. We're still looking at wide receivers going, some people love the Josh Palmer thing. I know the analytics community does, but you have Chargers fans being like, he never separated. He's, 40 something catches. Okay. Well, you still have to continue to work at that, Beane. And so that's where I look at this and I go, man, it's a pretty important draft. And then I'm going, I think we say that every April. Hey, big draft for Beane here.
To use your analogy, Sean McDermott is cooking with the ingredients that Brandon Beane gives him.
Yes.
And I think that it is important to remember that every GM is going to miss on some picks. This is not an exact science. You have some hidden gems. You have some guys that you think have all the attributes. That's why you pick them and they do not pan out. I do, if we're being honest, have my concerns because it feels like in these last couple of first couple picks, the Bills have not gotten the value that they have needed out of some of these guys. Yep. I think of Dalton Kincaid. I think of even obviously Keon. I know he was a second day pick, but he was the first pick of that second round. I mean, Kaiir obviously not even on the roster anymore.
And it's the the Keon when you traded back twice.
Yes. So it's like Beane has a lot of picks. He has a lot of capital to move around the draft board. And I expect them with what they have right now to do that and to be aggressive because we have seen Beane move up. And also, you're right, like 10 rookies are not making this team. So for this roster to work, I expect them to try to get aggressive with some stuff because I think for this roster where they are at, they saw the level that they could perform at with the roster last season, which a lot of people we all talked about was retooled and definitely not as talented as rosters in the past. So you have that. You saw the Bills get to the AFC Championship, but it's like you need those impact guys and you can get them in the draft. Like sometimes I think we sit back and we're like, rookies need time to develop. They do, but there's also rookies on other rosters that are immediate starters that make a huge impact.
Yeah.
And I want to see that out of a top round guy for the Bills because you see it on other teams. And I think of the Eagles and I just think of the way they're able to utilize their draft picks from the jump. And I want to see that in this Bills team. So we shall see, but you're right. I think for so long, so many people have criticized Sean McDermott and it is not a perfect process, but also I think there is some understanding of people being like, well, also there's two pieces to the equation as well.
Yes.
That's not to say that Brandon Beane is a bad GM. And like you talked about, he's not getting
really
fired.
good GM.
None of those things are true, but also you want to see that high end hit more than what you have seen. Be more impactful than what you have seen. So we'll see how that does draw out this offseason. And I mean, the draft is next month.
Yes.
Which is nuts to me.
Beane did talk about it too. Like you're building a team. Obviously with the suspensions, like it's kind of like when he traded Diggs in April, and he was like, "Hey, like right now we're not a great team without him, but we got to build around it." That's what they're gonna have to do here. I also had a dumb take. Tired Bills having two of their free agent signings out until week 7. Wired, it's like getting guys at the trade deadline for free.
Oh, I like that.
Right?
Also, you know what I was
just
thinking?
spin it. Just be like, hey, they already made moves. We're getting those guys
really good
back.
at PR.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you know what I was thinking about for draft picks? Draft picks are like watermelons. Like you can see, like, does this one have the webbing? Does this one have how does it sound? And as someone who loves watermelon, I've tried to master everything you're supposed to look for. And there is time and time again where I'm like, this is it. And I open it up and it's mealy. And I hate that.
I get the sports analogies, the golf and baseball. Jenna's like, hey,
we gotta bleep that also.
Jenna's gonna talk food. We got food analogies with Jenna.
Yeah. Hey, we got a lot of analogies. Musical chairs, bunting.
Yes.
Damar Hamlin also spoke to the media and was one of the questions, I think, was Catherine Fitzgerald of the Buffalo News asked him. And I thought it was a great question of like, what do you want for this upcoming year? Like your goals and kind of how you see it. And I thought Damar's answer was spot on as what he said he's hoping to accomplish.
You know, last year I feel like I was, getting the training wheels off, of myself in a way. Just coming back from literally dying on the field to, playing again in a significant role, a starting role, playing a full season again for the first time, just filling myself out. I feel like it was a year of that. And I feel like I had a lot of success on the field. So to see where I can take it from, knowing that's where I was within myself to, just growing into another year and being able to see what I did and develop myself into what I want to become this upcoming year. I'm excited for that journey. I've done it in every level, high school, college, and, now the pros, being able to just get a full load underneath me and then be able to build on it.
I loved how Damar he's always had the perspective, but we talked about, obviously he had the season where he goes into cardiac arrest, dies on the field. And he talks about how last year was really kind of like the following year, he like really wasn't playing. Like, I know he was comeback player of the year nominee and all of these things, but he was pretty much a special teams guy. And then last year, earns the starting job. I can't stress that enough. Earns the starting job. And he talks about how it was like taking the training wheels off. And then he kind of paused and he's like coming back from that, dying thing. Like most guys are like, yeah, it was really tough to recover from that sprained ankle. And Damar's like, I was coming back from dying. And so like to get that back on. So I think that's great. I love that perspective. And again, I think we saw flashes. If you want to criticize Damar, that's fine. I don't think he provides a ton in the coverage game. I think he has taken bad angles in filling run gaps and things like that. The Derrick Henry long touchdown run in Baltimore is obviously the first one that comes to my mind. But the dude flies around. The dude plays hard. Isn't afraid to tackle and things like that. So that was where I looked at it. And when Damar talked about that, it's like, I feel like that gets lost in last year's play of like, he was actually, 2 years removed kind of from the incident. Just kind of getting his feet back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, man, last year it was more of, we didn't look at Damar as like, oh, he's still coming back. It was like, hey, Damar, we're judging him as a football player strictly. And I think there were flashes and I think there were good moments. I think there were moments that he wants back and he kind of talked about that. But I thought that we do get lost in the whole story. Obviously, it's easy to get lost in it.
Yeah.
But I liked his analogy of like taking the training wheels off. Like first it was just like, hey, do I even want to get back on the bike? Then it's learning to ride again. So again, I think you can do worse things as your third safety in the NFL than Damar Hamlin.
I agree. And I think it makes sense that his body needs time to recover. Also, probably mentally. I mean, it's a lot to go through. I would like to think that maybe with now going on 3 years removed, he will be kind of hitting his stride and being a player that's closer to his ceiling. But again, the move, it's like the Dane Jackson.
Yep, exactly.
I think is it sexy? No, but this is a player that knows the team and has played well in spots. And you're looking for them to be a depth piece. And we'll see. And again, like we will see how that all unfolds, but it's not a bad guy to have back.
Yeah. And lastly, Joey Bosa.
I want to hear your thoughts on his press conference because you were there.
Loved it. Why are you smirking?
No, I'm not allowed to smile.
You just have this, like, you're going to say, I'll take it you didn't?
No, I thought it was fine.
Fine.
I thought it was, now you're putting words in my mouth. When I said fine, I didn't mean it was fine. I'm like, yeah, it was cool. Like we started covering the team when Rex Ryan was around. And it was like an anomaly for guys to be like, I love Western New York. I was excited to come here, all that stuff. To hear a guy like Joey Bosa, who has done so much in his career, is a brand name, all of these things, for him to be like, I'm pumped to be here. I want to be here because I want to take this team to the top. Like, it still is not lost on me that years ago, Buffalo was the laughingstock of the NFL, and now big name free agents want to be here.
Couldn't agree more. That was my big takeaway. The fact that you had a player that is a 5-time Pro Bowler, and Von was that way too, but Von had already won. Mm-hmm. So it was like Von came to Buffalo as a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
Joey Bosa is a 5-time Pro Bowler, very good player. Like I said, somebody's like, he hasn't had that many, his career's not that good. He's played 9 years. He's had double-digit sacks in 4 of them. And the last 3, he's been injured throughout the most. He said he was about 60 to 70% last year playing. Like, the dude gets after the quarterback when he's on the field. But to hear him say, I'm getting old and I want to win. Those guys used to go to New England. Those guys would go to other teams. The Chiefs do that now. They get the guys that are just wanting to be done and ring chasing. And I really think other teams offered more. And a guy that's from LA, hey, Kevin Adams, there's palm trees in LA and he wants to come to Western New York. Like, that to me, I left that press conference going, one, Joey Bosa, a pretty cool dude, laid back. Like, I loved his stories and his little tangents and all of that stuff. But I love the fact that he's sitting here going, yeah, I'm really, and it's not like the Chargers were the laughing stock of the league. Like, they won. They didn't win a ton, but to sit there and say, like, I want to win. My moments are fleeting. I don't have a lot of moments left, and I want them to be here. Loved all of that. And then obviously the bite that goes viral and that most people are picking up on is he said, I think we can do something special here. He wanted something different. He wanted to be a part of a football town. He wanted to be a part of a winning culture. And the Bills check all those out. And he goes, it's the last year in the stadium. And Josh texted me and said, if we do what we set out to do, we will be immortalized in this town. And he's like, all I could think about was like, chills. Like, yeah, like that is 100% true. And so he even kind of laughed, being like, I think Beauvais asked him about the fact of, how do you feel knowing that you could be the piece that sets them, gets them over the top? And he kind of like laughed and was like, I'm just one guy. Like, I hope to be a starter. I don't know if we'll see him get 40 to 50 snaps a game. With his injury history, he says he feels great. But there are times where you sit there and go like, man, the Bills have needed a guy that can close on third down. And Joey Bosa is a guy that when he's on the field can really kind of close and get to go on third down. So that was cool. And he kind of laughed too. He's like, yeah, I'm pretty good at getting after the quarterback. So I think I can help in that category. It was just, I don't know. I was very more excited after hearing him talk about his perspective. That was what was the most impressive thing to me, is to have a guy. We always talk about Josh's self-awareness as like his best trait. I thought Joey was really aware of like, hey, it felt like I was a rookie a few years ago. Now I'm 9 years in the league. I don't got a lot of moments left. I want to come somewhere that I can win. And he kind of laughed. He's like, had a lot of experience against the Chiefs. Like already like wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Like I've gotten Mahomes a couple times. I know what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really cool. And I hope that he can stay healthy, and I hope the Bills can put together a plan to help that. And I mean, Josh is right though. Like if you
100%,
you will be immortalized in Western New York when they win their first Super Bowl.
Yeah. So
And then the ones after that too.
Bosa also was, somebody asked him about, he was an extra on Game of Thrones.
I didn't know that.
And he said that, he goes, the one thing that he goes, he thought it was cool. It was cold. And he's like, if you stop a frame, he's like, you might see my big nose in the corner of a shot. He's like, extras are really small. They didn't have any armor for me. So I was just kind of off to the side. Really funny. But then he told some part of the story where he was like, yeah, look back now. He goes, after that, he's gotten into chess. And he goes, and I had no idea that insert chess player. I don't know. He goes, he was in the trailer with me. And he goes, apparently he's like the world's greatest chess player. And he goes, people kept coming up and kissing his feet and worshiping this guy. And Bosa's like, I'm just sitting there like, who's this guy? His daughter's annoying as hell. And it was just like the perfect, like candid, like being so candid to be like, I didn't know who the guy was, but his daughter was annoying as hell. His little daughter. It was just like so funny of like, why? It's just, It was just one of those moments where it's like, you get that candidness that I always loved and appreciate in those press conferences.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes when people are in front of a mic, which is totally understandable, but no, I think he's another character, and I'm curious like how this group will. Every team is different. Every team, builds their chemistry one way or another. I'm curious how this team will all come together. Not in a bad way, just like every year is different. Who will be the leaders that emerge? Will it be Joey Bosa? Will it be someone else? Like Mac Hollins, we know last year took on a role that no one was expecting. Is there another guy that's going to kind of assert himself like that? So we'll have to wait and see.
Last note, Terrell Bernard changed his number to number 8, which will be weird to see a linebacker wear number 8.
So weird. I had to like read the Bills posted about it. I'm like, what?
And I think what sucks too for Bernard is to change your number this late. I believe you have to buy all of your old jerseys. So like, no, I obviously, but like, it's the fact of like, you have to buy all of the 43 Bernard jerseys.
Yeah.
Like, cause the NFL is not like, they have those stockpiled. It's not like they're just going to be like throwing them out, losing money for the sake of the change. So
yeah. Interesting.
All
8
right.
is going to be weird.
8
Karen
is going to be
changed
weird.
his number, like
Yes. but corners can wear single digits.
I agree. I'm just saying in general. When you
And also,
change the number-
Bernard's not the biggest guy to begin with, and I feel like he's going to look smaller with
I
just
agree.
one number on his jersey.
I agree. It's kind of weird.
Let us know what you think about
about
your-
everything.
about your middle linebacker wearing number 8.
Let
All
us
right.
know what you think about our analogies.
Yes,
We were cooking on this.
watermelons.
We recorded this on Sunday at noon.
Yeah.
So if anything happens.
Yes. All right. I think we got it all. This was a good recap. Sorry again for the delay. We did want to get one out. Also, shout out. I should have done this in the beginning because I feel like sometimes people tail off at the end. So credit if you made it this far. Shout out to Bryant. I met him at the St. Patrick's Day Festival yesterday in Rochester, walked in the parade, and he came up to me and said he's a big Buffalo Plus fan, watches everything we do, big fan. So that was really cool. So shout out Bryant. And he goes, it's like Kobe. And I was like, nice to meet you, Kobe. And then he goes, it's Bryant. And I was like, that's right. It's Bryant. I was like, I'm terrible at this shit.
That is such a Dan thing
Yeah.
to do.
It is so funny. Again, we've talked about this before, but like, it's crazy that people like listening to us to the extent that they do. So when people come up to us, it's not like Catalana's been getting it for 40 years. Like he understands, he knows how to like, do all of the schmoozing. And a lot of times it's like, we're at airports and they're like, oh my gosh, you're Mike Catalana. And then I just kind of like, I'm gonna go get a water. Mike, you know, water. And then they come back to like big fans. And I was like, oh, we love it.
Oh my God.
But yeah, we try and get your name and get them in the pod. So appreciate it as always,
Thank
Brian.
you, Bryant.
All right. That'll do it for us. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Also, the reason I've been looking off camera is because the monitor to actually see Jenna is a little bit kiltered to the camera. It's not like I'm being held hostage looking off to the side. Just wanted if people.
No one thought that, but thanks for putting that in their head.
You got it. All right. Appreciate it as always. We'll have more content again coming up throughout the weeks. We still have Chris Trapasso, all the content that we still have from the NFL Combine we will get to. So again, appreciate it as always. We'll catch you here next time on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel presented by Connors and Ferris.